The last 3 games have finally revealed the real Pelicans. Tougher, more competitive, and still not close to contending. And that should inform what they do the remainder of the season. It's a Monday episode of Locked On Pelicans. Let's go.
You are Locked On Pelicans, your daily New Orleans Pelicans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to another edition of Locked On Pelicans, the daily podcast covering your favorite team, the New Orleans Pelicans and NBA, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, available wherever you get your podcasts and available on YouTube. I'm your host, Pelicans Insider, credential member of the media, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter. Here with y'all on this Monday, a game day for your Pelicans as they take on the Phoenix Suns. But I want to talk about the loss to the San Antonio Spurs over the weekend, 126-119. You're finally seeing the real Pelicans, who we actually thought we were going to get this season. I'll explain why that's a good thing. There's positives in there. But also, they weren't able to close this game out. They were down near 20 at one point. It's still not great, and that needs to inform what this team does going forward. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by Game Night. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. And of course, thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We are here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast, covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Join over 12,000 Pelicans fans on YouTube as well and become an everydayer. It means you listen Monday through Friday to Locked On Pelicans. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. That's very cool to say. Your team every day. So let's get into this one. 126-119 against the San Antonio Spurs. Spurs are good. Spurs are good. It's as simple as that. This is a good team, particularly with Victor Wembanyama, and now you add Derik Fox into the mix, who lit up New Orleans in his first game back. We didn't really expect anything other than that, truthfully. 24 points on 9 of 14 shooting. That was a very good performance from him. Spurs are good. You see how good when you get just that kind of point guard play from Derik Fox, the team's going to be good. There's no shame losing to the San Antonio Spurs. And the fact is, it was pretty close. And New Orleans had a chance to just win this one. And it was nice to see them kind of battle back after moments when they looked kind of dead in the water. The San Antonio Spurs had a 19-point lead in this game, in the middle of the second quarter. But New Orleans finished the second quarter on a pretty strong charge to get this one to 8. And they kept it close, throughout the third and beginning of the fourth, and then really made a run late before just, when you're down 19, you tend to run out of gas and you're not able to make these comebacks, and you need to just not get down 19 in the first point. But you're seeing, the true Pelicans. This is what we expected this whole season. A team that is going to be competitive, is not anywhere near a contender, but one that, hey, might play you close even if they lose games. This is kind of the team that showed Joe Dumars' vision of, we're going to compete on a nightly basis. We did not see that through the first 6 games or so, but now that they've got 2 wins in a row and a competitive loss to the San Antonio Spurs, you start to feel better about the team. Hold that thought, because better doesn't really mean much in this regard. You've seen them look like they're basically not looking like the worst team in the league like they were for a little while. You even look at the Dallas Mavericks, and I was listening to Locked On Mavericks the other day, and they were like, yeah, Nico Harrison, the GM, needs to be fired, and it has nothing to do with the Luka Doncic trade. There's that part of it too, but this team, that Mavs team, shouldn't be the worst team in the league, and when you lose to the Wizards once, barely beat the Wizards again, lose to New Orleans, you look like the worst team in the league, and that's not what the expectation is here. So they were really below the expectation. New Orleans is still below the expectation for them. We'll get into that in the next segment, in the third segment in particular here. But they at least look more like what we thought they should look like. That shouldn't save anybody's job or anything like that. But this is more of the team we were expecting, I think, to see. You have Trey Murphy going off 41 points. I want to talk about him in the third segment of today's show. That ties his career high, leading this team. You saw Jeremiah Fears, Derik Queen putting in really good performances here that are able to help this team somewhat now while really building towards the future. Fears was great in this game. 18 points, which was the second leading scorer for New Orleans, 3 assists, 3 rebounds, 8 of 17 from the field, just playing downhill, attacking, and showing off the different bag that he has. But he's a rookie. He was a -1 in this game. Some of that had to do with some of the lineups that he was in, and we'll start to dive into more of those over the next week or so. But Fears looked to be about a net neutral, which is fine. Derik Queen playing 24 and a half minutes. Net 0. He was a ±0 in this one. 13 points, 8 assists. You really saw the playmaking from him, the vision from him. You saw that these guys can be core pieces going forward while not actively harming you right now. That's great. I'll take that from those guys right now. That's kind of part of the vision of this team. This team battled back from 19 down, doing what they could do and just having guys make an impact and stepping up. Saddiq Bey hitting some shots. Herb Jones, his 3-point shot has been falling from this season. He had 15 points on the night. Bey with 10. These are role players that are able to help keep you going forward. And New Orleans battled back. They haven't always done that this season, but they've battled back in this and coming off of 2 wins. Yeah, this is about what we thought from this team. I did not expect them to be a deep playoff team. I regularly said I think barely above 500 would be their ceiling. The play-in tournament to me was their ceiling. They look like a potential play-in tournament team. They did not look like that earlier in the year through the first 6 games at all, but now they're here, right? Even their 2 wins were less than convincing and not particularly against great squads. Barely beating Charlotte, it taking until the final minute of the game to really put that game away, almost the final possession of the game to put that game away, doesn't exactly inspire confidence when Charlotte was playing 4 rookies heavy minutes in that. The Dallas Mavericks look like a disaster of a team, and New Orleans kind of beat them. Wasn't a runaway. It was closer than what you would want. This is what this team is, and I'm glad at least they're at that level. Look, if it were another year where you had your first-round pick next year, lose the games, I don't care. We can start talking draft and thinking about the future with some of the guys that you have. But that's not the case here, so I'd rather them win and be competitive because there's no point in them losing games right now. But they are far from a complete team. Even if you were to add Zion Williamson back into the squad, he's been out. Even if you were to put in Jordan Poole, whose minutes have not been good for this squad, you don't feel like that's going to change a ton. Zion Williamson has not played particularly great for New Orleans to start the year. Something just looks a little bit off, different with him. So this is what the team is. They're competitive, but not good. You know, whether you like that or not, that's a personal choice. Your mileage may vary. But given they don't have next year's first round pick, yeah, be as competitive as possible. There's no harm in winning games. It's not like it kills your lottery odds or anything like that. But this is the team that we've seen, right? They show flashes of being competent, being very good. The talent is certainly there to do some things, but coaching is holding them back. The depth, which I want to get into in the next segment, is also holding them back. They look far from being, you know, greater than the sum of their parts right now, which has kind of been the history under this team here. But at least like the real Pelicans are starting to stand up a little bit more. There's something to be said for just playing to what we expect and not looking like a complete dumpster fire. Doesn't mean they're good. Doesn't mean that changes shouldn't happen or anything like that, or that they should be complacent, because they absolutely, under no circumstances, should be. But it doesn't seem like the raging fire is, you know, just sitting there being like, this is fine. It's about what we thought. Like, hey, there's some smoke. Maybe we need to check this out. And I don't know what analogy I was doing there. But it's there. You kind of get it. So coming up next, let's talk about the depth. And this is going to kind of determine what New Orleans needs to do the remainder of the season. I think this is a really big, important point. And let's get into the depth, which is lacking. That's coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by Robinhood. Your ambition just met its match with Robinhood. You play for the win, not just on game day, every day. You lock in on every opening, beating your personal records, beating it again. Channel that drive into your money. Robinhood puts you in control of your money. Trade stocks and EFTs, options, futures, and crypto all on one platform. You can now build and execute your own trades from a desktop with Robinhood's with Robinhood Legends advanced tools, or take advantage of the new Robinhood strategies with a tailored portfolio managed by a team of experts. You expect more from yourself. Expect more from your money. Get started today at Robinhood.com/yourmoney. Again, that's Robinhood.com/yourmoney. Your money, your move. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is also brought to you by Game Time. Basketball season is officially here, and nothing beats being in the arena for those opening games. But let's be real, getting tickets can be a total headache. Between waiting in queues, surprise fees, and prices that jump right before checkout, it's easy to get frustrated when all you want to do is cheer on your team. And that's where Game Time comes in. It's the app that gives fans the advantage for scoring amazing NBA tickets fast, easy, and stress-free. People want to go to Pelicans games. It's fun just being there. They want to see the rookies and Jeremiah Fears, Derik Queen, especially now. I can't get you tickets, friends of mine. That's why I just tell everybody to use Game Time. It's my go-to ticketing app because you can get great seats in minutes. I actually used it recently for Pelicans games for a group of people here. And I love that what you see is what you pay. There's no hidden fees at checkout. And if you're going to a place you've never been before, you can see what the view from your seat will be before you buy the tickets with their in-app seat view feature. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. That's code LOCKEDONNBA, LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go with Game Time. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We are here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast, covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Become an everydayer. It means you listen Monday through Friday to Locked On Pelicans. It's interesting now with the rookies doing well. We'll dive into them right here in a second as well. And for your second listen, Saints got to win. Ross Jackson over at Locked On Saints covering everything black and gold. Tyler Shook throwing it deep too. Ross is going to tell you everything you need to know about that win over at the Locked On Saints podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the #1 sports podcast network, your team every day. So let's get into the depth here, because this is something that is holding New Orleans back. This is both not a bad thing and a concern at the same time. I want to spend a couple minutes talking about this. Depth was touted as a key thing for New Orleans going into the season. They talked about, we want to be deep, we want to be deep, we want to be deep, and that's going to help us do a lot of things here. And look, truthfully, I think some of that is like a messaging at Zion, whether directly, indirectly, subconsciously, or consciously. You couldn't rely on him. He's been out, kind of proven true. So you need depth to kind of make up for him. That's one of the reasons why I said I think they've traded up and heavily went after Derik Queen to be some Zion Williamson insurance. 8 assists from him. If you need a big man to be an offensive hub because you kind of put all those eggs in the Zion basket, you found him. His playmaking was incredible, I thought, against the San Antonio Spurs. I'm going to talk about that more later in the week, probably on the Wednesday show. I want to break that down a little bit because some of the things he did is very special, and it's only going to open up his game really tremendously. I want to get into how his passing will allow him to score more and vice versa and all of those things. You can really see the vision with him. I talked about this on draft night. Again, we're removing the trade for it here. Derik Queen is here. That's what we're going to focus on right now. So, yeah, you get it. It makes sense. They were touting the depth. However, he's still a rookie. And he's not ready to probably play 36 minutes yet. The rotation with him and the way they're using him is a little bit odd, but they definitely see value of having him out there on the court for extended periods of time. And that might mean 12-minute runs, which is essentially what he did in this game. And that's why they're doing that. The more he's on the court can get into the rhythm of the game. That's why you don't want to play him 8, 8, 8, and 8, and rather do like 12 and 12 minutes for him, I think. 2 stints versus 4, or, and it kind of gets you what you need out of him into that rhythm. You saw that as the game went on, as the fourth quarter went on, the assists and the chemistry he had with players on the court seemed to grow as he kind of felt out the game and could read it a little bit better. He's a very high basketball IQ player. All of that said, he was a 0. Right? Plus minus was a 0. He did not elevate them. He did not hurt them. That's about a rookie. That's, in fact, a good rookie. Jeremiah Fears, Derik Queen aren't necessarily ready, maybe by the end of the season, but right now to lead this team to wins. So the team touted depth. It's going to help us. It's going to do all that. It hasn't really worked out. The bench in this game was terrible. They actually did a good job on Victor Wembanyama. Wemby being just a +5, I think is saying a lot. Wembanyama is one of the toughest, if not the toughest guys to defend in the NBA. And New Orleans, he had 18 and 8, did a pretty decent job of limiting his impact out there on the court. That's encouraging, but they really couldn't take a ton of advantage in those minutes when he was off the court. And that's what really hurt. They won the minutes that he was off the court. That's a good thing, I think. But they didn't have a massive run when when Wembanyama was off the court and you're like, oh, okay, New Orleans is going to do some damage here. Happened a little bit at the end of the second quarter when he was off for a couple of minutes, and they ended up going on a 20-9 run, more or less, to close that quarter out. But some of that came when he was out there on the court. In his stint in the third quarter, when he was off the court, the Spurs actually had an 8-0 run during that stretch. It ended up being like a +6 for the San Antonio Spurs. They weren't like killed in the non-Victor Wembanyama minutes, but you've got to win those. And New Orleans has not done a good job of winning the minutes when the opponent's star players are off the court. Ja Morant is a very good example of that. Wemby is a good example of that. Jaylen Brown with the Celtics is a very good example of that. New Orleans got kind of waxed in some of those minutes when those guys weren't on here. That says your depth isn't good. It's what this means. Look, Carlo Makovic, 9 minutes of action here, -7. Jose is an impactful player. This wasn't quite the same from him. But Jordan Hawkins in 18 minutes off the bench, -22. Micah Peavey in 17 and a half minutes off the bench, -5. Now, they don't really have other guys to play. Should Yves Missi get healthy? He's questionable officially when I'm recording this for tonight's game against against Phoenix. That replaces some of the Carlo minutes. Maybe that makes you a little bit better there. When DeJounte Murray comes back, do you see as many minutes for Jordan Hawkins? Probably not. Same thing with Jordan Poole. Probably not. So that maybe helps it a little bit, but how much are you actually expecting from Poole at this point going forward? What are your realistic expectations from Murray? The depth is not good. And if you keep losing those bench minutes while your starters aren't looking good enough to win their minutes, otherwise you'd be winning some of these games. You look at the starters here, and it's not particularly great for New Orleans. Trey had 41 points, -14. Kevon Looney in 17 minutes, he's your starter, -6, right? Jeremiah Fears, -1. Herb Jones and Saddiq Bey were the two starters in positives. Now, a lot goes into that, but that clearly shows the starting lineup wasn't exactly getting it done here. And partially probably has to do with Looney. If you put Queen in there, does it look different? You put Missi in there, does it look different? I think that can really matter. So your starters aren't winning their minutes, and your bench isn't good enough to kind of do it. It's not a great thing because New Orleans touted this as the depth that they were going to have, and they did not actually build a deep team. Saddiq Bey's nice. Don't get me wrong. But that's not like the difference maker between wins and losses. Jeremiah Fears, Derik Queen, not the difference maker total against good teams. Against bad teams, they can be a difference maker, but against middle of the road to good teams, probably not just yet. That's where New Orleans is. They are competitive enough. It goes to what we just said in the first segment, but competitive enough, but not there. Not there. They're still doing 2 timelines. They're trying to win now because there's no reason not to. You don't have next year's pick, so there's no reason to tank. But also, Queen could play more minutes. Maybe not just yet, but over time. You're seeing Jeremiah Fears get a ton of minutes. They're closing with him when it feels right. Willie Green's doing a good job of who do we need to have on the court that gives us the best chance of winning? I'm going to give him, proper credit on that sort of thing. He played 31 in this, 31 and a half, but they're just not good enough. And so that means you can either make a win now trade and try and kind of go all in for it, which I really don't recommend that they do. Or you just kind of don't worry about the wins and losses and just play your guys to try and go for development. And if you happen to get some wins along the way, that's great. If you don't, it is what it is. You're investing in Queen this season. You're investing in Jeremiah Fears this season. I do worry because I don't trust the front office right now. Look, you hit on Queen, you hit on Fears, it seems like, but other things have been very questionable about how the franchise is operated. I would not like to see them make some sort of win now move, given that they kind of are facing somewhat of a rebuild here, depending on what you end up doing with Zion Williamson, who does not have a lot of value around the league. You're not getting multiple first-round picks for him. You might get 1, maybe 2, and they're going to be lottery protected and those sorts of things. They're not going to be particularly great picks. So with that depth lacking, it's going to limit the ceiling of how competitive this team can be. And I do worry that then that means they feel, oh, we got to do something. Let's go for it. Because, yeah, you're right. If we can fill out a little bit more depth, but your starters aren't working either. And so it's not just a depth problem. It's kind of an everything problem here. And look, coaching and lineups and, at times the offense completely looking inept is not helping them whatsoever with it. This team does struggle of looking themselves in the mirror and taking proper stock of who they are and having that kind of self-reflection. This is not a time, what could be considered a crucial time in this franchise's trajectory, to look in the mirror. I've got one over here, and be like, oh yeah, like, look, I don't look great today. I'm not going to look in the mirror and be like, heck yeah, look at me, right? I got a hat on for a reason. So I don't know where I'm going with the show now. The team needs to do the right thing, and I worry they're going to look in the mirror and do the wrong thing, and that scares me right now. But it does kind of inform that this team should just focus on these young guys, in my opinion, going forward, because they're really showing you the future of the franchise here, because you're just not going to be competitive enough. Coming up next, look, a part of that is Trey Murphy. When he's playing well like this, it's a different version of him, but we haven't seen all of that. I want to get into that because there's larger things at play with that potentially. That's coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. So even if you miss the start of a game or you want to ride a hot hand like Trey Murphy getting hot late, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. And you can even combine your live bets into a same game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. And it's just going to keep everything more exciting, especially when the Pelicans now keep making late pushes in these games. Good second halves, kind of, to try and make a run and win these here. So right now, FanDuel, this is one of the best offers, I think the best offer we've ever seen from FanDuel, is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. That's $300 in bonus bets for new customers when your first $5 bet wins over at FanDuel.com. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We are here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast, covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcast. If you're not an everydayer, it's okay. Totally fine. If you listen one day a week, I appreciate that. But try making it twice. You're going to get a lot of content here. You're going to get some insight you're not going to get anywhere else. I want to really dive into some things with Derik, which are going to really shock you too. It's going to be a fun show coming up later in the week. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. For your second listen, Saints 1, go listen to the Locked On Saints squad show. Dylan Sanders, who's been with me on Fridays. You'll see him on here probably twice this week. Got to tell you something going on with him. And he's got Lance Moore and others talking all things Saints over there. So make sure you make the Locked On Saints squad show your second listen to get like a round table view of the New Orleans Saints. So let's wrap up the show looking at Trey Murphy in this game. 41 points, got it going, really helped the Pelicans close that first half in really strong fashion. But he's been a little bit inconsistent this year. And one of the concerns I have is comes from not making a coaching change. Willie Green is probably staved off being fired right now. We'll see what happens against Phoenix here, but they've won 2 games. They look competitive against the San Antonio Spurs. I struggle to see the Pelicans front office and brass making that change if you didn't when you were 0-6. Now, maybe you lose in embarrassing fashion tonight. We'll see. But Trey Murphy, 41 points. It took a little bit for him to get going. 41 points, though, on 22 shot attempts. He was 15 for 22, 5 of 11 from deep, 9 rebounds, 3 assists, 1 steal, 1 turnover. He was phenomenal in this game. This is the Trey Murphy we've been waiting to see. But look, you don't see it every single game. These are the moments, these are the games when Trey needs to step up. There have been a couple other times when Trey Murphy needs to step up. Even when Zion's been healthy, when Zion's off the court, those are like, it's Trey's time to shine, and he's not continually delivered in those moments. I do think some of this, and this was the Pelicans coming out super flat in this game, come from them just not being motivated to play for head coach Willie Green. You can just see it with Willie Green saying things like, yeah, we don't run plays for Trey. Part of that is like they trust Trey to find the right spots and the players to get him the ball, and it's not like we're de-emphasizing Trey Murphy, but also at times he's your best player on the court, Help him be the best player on the court. You can see that these guys at times just have moments when they're like, we don't care, and are going through the motions. I'm not going to get into the whole have they lost the locker room or not. And look, Willie Green's never going to say that when people demand that gets asked. It's a dumb question, but you can see some issues here with Trey being able to play like this and explode and look this good. And when you have a dysfunctional team, losing, things just not working, guys, become demotivated and can find that motivation at other times. You don't want that to be the case this season. There's no reason to lose games. Have guys just try and be their very best and try and create the correct atmosphere around the team. And I do think Trey is someone that's just like, this is annoying. Right? This is Trey's 5th year in the league. It's been a lot of dysfunction and discontent and injuries and things like that throughout his tenure here. And this is me I have not talked to Trey about this, nor anyone associated with Trey about this. Let me be clear here. This is my conjecture. I do worry that Trey is this is annoying. Like, I'm sick of this, right? Help me be the best version of me, or maybe get me out of here. And I do worry that if things continue to be very I don't want to quite call it dysfunctional, but not great, that he's going to, maybe be like secretly, quietly being like, I would like to be traded. This ain't it. Zion's hurt again, right? Jordan Poole's kind of pouty and all that. Like, this isn't working, and let's just get me somewhere else. Now, he's under team control. They don't have to do anything, but that'd be a pretty big blow to this franchise here. You see it where he's like, I'm not happy with how I'm playing, and he wakes up. You've seen this team respond and be competitive when they've gotten blown out at times because they just got their butts kicked and their pride's hurt, and they're going to try and kind of fix that. But they're not doing it consistently enough, and I do think that is impacting players like Trey, and potentially some other ones at times too. And so you see this version of Trey, and it's like, is there a coach out there that can get this out of him constantly? And if there is, or if you just want to make a change to see if that happens, it would be worth it. Something to keep in mind as the Pelicans finish up a road trip, head home for a long homestand here. So that's going to do it for this episode of Locked On Pelicans. As always, I'm your host, Jake Madison, at NolaJake on Twitter. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. I'll be back with y'all tomorrow.